Good evening, everyone. Good evening. My name is Jason L. Kuby. I'm the president and CEO of One Acadiana. And on behalf of the entire One Acadiana family, along with our terrific partners at the Leadership Institute of Acadiana, it's my pleasure to welcome you this evening to the City Parish President's Debate between Joel Robideau and Dee Stanley. I want to thank the many audience members who are here in attendance tonight, as well as those at home watching on the Acadiana Open Channel live stream. I also want to thank our co-hosts, the Leadership Institute of Acadiana, for joining us in this enterprise, as well as a special thank you to LSU Fiber for being the corporate sponsor of the debate tonight. Sorry? What did I say? LUS Fiber. LUS Fiber, excuse me. Settle down. I also want to give a special thank you to UL and in particular the Picard Center for Child Development and Lifelong Learning for providing such a fitting space for tonight's event. Lastly, I want to give a special thank you to Dr. Ryan Teton, who's the Department Head of Political Science at the University of Louisiana at Lafayette, for agreeing to moderate tonight's event. Ryan, thank you. The fall elections present an exciting opportunity for the future of our community and indeed the future of our region. In anticipation of this opportunity, One Acadiana developed the Priorities for a Better Lafayette, a set of focused priorities that, if aggressively pursued, will take our community to the next level. In conjunction with tonight's event, we're releasing the names of the candidates for City Parish President and Council who have expressed their support for all or some of these priorities. These are detailed in the white paper that is at your seats and that's available on our website. We couldn't be more excited by the response that we've received from the candidates and by the consensus being built to address these critical issues over the next 4 years and beyond. The One Acadiana priorities that are highlighted in the white paper available on our website, www.oneacadiana.org, include accelerating the implementation of Plan Lafayette, including revitalizing key gateways and revitalizing our urban core. They include prioritizing infrastructure investment, making sure that we've got a database plan for roads and bridges that's based on public input, that prioritizes investments, and that provides a funding solution for infrastructure needs in unincorporated areas of the parish. And finally, our priorities include fixing the charter to create greater, more equitable representation for every citizen throughout both the city and the parish. We know that there's a lot of great things going on in our community. It's a great place to live. We love Lafayette, and we're going to take it to an even greater level as we take Acadiana to an even greater level. I know that we're going to hear a lot more about these and other important issues tonight, so I want to thank the candidates again. I'm looking forward, as you are, to tonight's debate. I want to turn it over to Dr. Ryan Teton to take it from here.
I would like to, again, welcome everybody to the One Acadiana and Leadership Institute of Acadiana City Parish President Debate. My name, again, is Dr. Ryan Lee Teton, and believe it or not, I'm the head of the Political Science Department at UL. Tonight we're going to, sorry, I had to. The timekeeper for this evening is Ms. Ann Swanson of the Leadership Institute of Acadiana. Tonight we're going to hear from two of the candidates running for City Parish President. The first candidate, and we did this alphabetically, is Representative Joel Robideau. Joel just served his third term as state representative in the legislature, where he won numerous accolades. He served as the chairman of the Ways and Means Committee and Speaker pro tem. Joel is recognized as a conservative consensus builder, willing to work together with any and all involved parties. He attended Fatima High School, USL as an undergrad, and then LSU for his master's, where he also met his wife of 29 years, Babette. Moved back to Lafayette he had moved back to Lafayette and raised his 3 sons here. Joel has a successful local CPA practice for 25 years, serving local businesses and families. Our second candidate is Dee Stanley. Growing up in New Orleans, the son of a broadcast journalist, Stanley was exposed to the news media and politics and earned a degree in broadcast journalism from LSU. He came to Lafayette in 1981 as a general assignment reporter for KLFY TV 10 and served as city clerk from 1990 to 1994 before returning to KLFY TV 10 as news director. In 2003, Stanley was appointed to his current position as Chief Administrative Officer of Lafayette Consolidated Government, where he served for 12 years. Stanley is married to Blue Rolfs, a KLFY news anchor. The debate will have the following format. The candidates will begin by delivering an open statement, the order of which has been determined by a previously held coin toss. This opening statement should be no longer than 3 minutes. They will then be asked questions largely submitted by the membership boards of the Leadership Institute of Lafayette and One Acadiana. The candidate to whom the first response will be directed will alternate. Each candidate will have roughly 2 minutes to answer the question, and then the other candidate will have roughly the same period to address the question, as well as provide any kind of response. The candidate to whom the question was first directed will also have the opportunity to further respond or engage the issue if he should so choose. If more time is needed to fully provide an answer, a response, or explore the issue, in the interest of providing the most information to you, the audience, time will be granted. At the end of the debate, each candidate will be given roughly 2 minutes for a closing statement. In the interest of time and impartiality, we would ask that the audience hold all applause until the conclusion of the debate, apart from at this time, where we would like to welcome Dee Stanley and Joel Robideau. And the first opening statement will be given by Mr. Stanley.
Good afternoon, everybody, and it's great to see such a house. I've enjoyed seeing you out on the road and in our door-to-door campaign, and also at the forums that we've done. Joel and I, this is number 16, and I think we have just one more to do before the big election day on October 24th. For me, and the message that I've tried to get out as I've walked door to door and as I've talked to you and we've done these forums, has been one of experience and also about relationships. I've had the pleasure of working with 3 mayors, one of the most significant mayors in Lafayette's history, Douglas Strapp, who served between 1980 and 1992. I was able to work with him under 2 years when I was hired by the Lafayette City Council back in the early 1990s. Also Mayor Bowen. Those were 2 tumultuous years. Anyone who's from Lafayette or lived in Lafayette knows what we went through between 1992 and 1996 under Mayor Bowen. And then my third mayor, although the official title is City Parish President, you'll have a decision to make in November about whether to change that title to Mayor President, such as the case in Baton Rouge. So I bring the experience of dealing and working with those 3 mayors in our community. That means balancing 12 budgets and working very hard with our council members to do that. I've worked directly with or for 5 city councils, including the 3 city parish councils. And the first council, when Joey and I first came into office in 2004, they were the experienced group. They were the term-limited guys, and we were the new guys on the block. Now in the last term, Joey, of course, is term-limited, and we have several of our council members that are running through their last term. We also have a great relationship with our mayors, with the business community, and also with One Acadiana. And I believe as we look at the challenges that rise ahead, we are looking towards someone who has the local experience, who's been involved, boots on the ground, who knows how our budgets operate, who knows what it takes to get things done, and then move on successfully sometimes when we don't get things done. I look forward to the questions tonight. I ask you to vote on October 24th. Early voting, by the way, October 10. I'm number 72.
The next opening statement will be given by Joel Robideau.
Thank you. Let me start off by thanking LUS, the One Acadiana, the Leadership Institute for having this forum. Like Dee said, this is our 400th one, but it's still great anytime that we can come and speak to an audience of this size, so that people have the information that they need to make an informed vote. So thank y'all for doing it. Like Dr. Teaton said in the introduction, I grew up here, graduated high school and college here. My wife and I raised our family here, and as most of us, you know, I love this place. It's Lafayette. It's a great community. I think we're all feel blessed to be a part of it. And the one thing that I learned when I got elected and went to Baton Rouge, as one of 144, that if you're going to have any success at all, then it's going to be because of the relationships that you're able to develop. And so I feel like over the 12 years, that concept has been reinforced over and over and over again. And when I go throughout the communities and I meet with the other elected officials and the businessmen and the families, that's the one recurring theme that comes up is we just want a place where the elected officials are doing the business of our parish, and they're getting along together, they're finding solutions together, they're agreeing to disagree, and when they can't agree, they put that behind them and try to find solutions to put us on the best path possible. And that tells me what the people really want out of us. They want us to be Lafayette Parish. It's we. It's not us and them. It's not they. We're all family. We're all each other's customers. We're all each other's friends. And we all want what's best for Lafayette. And I'm committed to working towards those relationships, to patch up whatever needs to be patched up. And ultimately, I know that I can have the greatest ideas possible. But if I can't get the council to go along with me, then those ideas are just going to sit on the shelf. And so the council, the city parish president, we're not going to always agree. We're all going to have different mindsets. We all have our own constituencies. But at the end of the day, I think we can get together, we can build consensus, and we can move this parish forward.
Thank you very much to you both. And now to the questions. The first question will be directed to Mr. Robideau. LUS is one of the primary sponsors of tonight's event. What are additional ways to leverage Lafayette's investment in fiber optic technology? And also, what do you see as the future of LUS Fiber?
Well, I think first and foremost, we have to look at it, as a capitalist and say, does it make sense to expand LUS out there? And ultimately, the numbers are going to tell us the answer to that. I think there is certainly a market that exists throughout the parish of folks that want to have LUS, and for obvious reasons. So LUS will have to do that analysis. I don't think it's our role as government to force them to do it or to hold them back. If it's something that's going to expand LUS and it's going to make money for them, it's going to make this community better, and it's going to make it more attractive for businesses to come here, whether here means the city of Lafayette or means unincorporated areas or means somewhere else in the parish, then great, because at the end of the day, a great Lafayette parish is going to benefit the city of Lafayette and vice versa. And so anything that we can do to make sure that that happens without getting in the way of capitalism, I think makes perfect sense.
Mr. Stanley?
The key is that LUS is us and we are LUS. If you're currently a ratepayer, you are a stockholder. It's not some separate entity, not something that exists over here outside of government. The question is whether that service that has been made affordable and made available to the people of the city of Lafayette should be made available either to the unincorporated area or potentially to the smaller towns. The key ingredient to that, in addition to the ROI, the return on investment, or the capital, are the people. They are the ones who made the decision on LUS in 1897. To sell the bonds that created an electric generating capacity for the city of Lafayette. It's what makes us different from many of the other municipalities in Louisiana, is that you own it and you're the stockholders. The private sector didn't bring electricity to our community until about 40 years after LUS did it. Does anybody think we would have been able to locate a university here of the quality of UL without electricity? Fiber is next generation architecture. It's the next generation of utilities. So the first thing we need to do after we do the business model and the analysis is to determine who wants it and who in here plays Blu-ray. It's not on the see come, it's on the come see. And that means that if Youngsville as a business community believes that they need it and they're hungry for that bandwidth and they cannot get it from the private sector, and I think that's the key, and they cannot get the bandwidth that they need from the private sector, then they make that decision, they have an election, and they work in partnership with LUS Fiber to build what they need to build. The reason that LUS is not providing electricity within the city of Youngsville or Broussard or other places is because there were already electric providers that are providing that. So we have to look at what the provisions that are being made by the other providers and let the people decide in addition to the business model.
Mr. Robideau, any response?
Well, the only thing I would add is that 20 years ago, if we were talking about fiber, not all of us would understand even what that was. And so 20 years from now, I don't know what that conversation is going to be. And so, LUS has its work cut out for it because technology changes so fast now that they're going to have to stay on top of whatever the next generation of service provider is in that arena. And so that's something, again, it's a capitalist, I mean, they're in the business now. So there's a lot of things to consider. But ultimately, I just think it makes sense for LUS to expand as much as makes financial sense for them.
Okay. The second question would be directed to Mr. Stanley. Lafayette recently went through a community-wide process to develop a comprehensive plan that lays out a vision to accommodate and manage the anticipated growth of 66,000 new residents between 2010 and 2030. What steps will your administration take to ensure the momentum and continued implementation?
It's a
of
great
Plan
question.
Lafayette?
It's a great question, and it's not the government's plan, it's the people's plan. That was a 3-year process. And our mayor, your mayor, and the parish president made the comment back then, if this becomes government's plan, we're in trouble. It needs to be the people's plan. And there are multiple components to that plan that allow us to deal with issues such as sprawl, that address certain issues such as traffic. Where does it make sense to build more dense neighborhoods as opposed to less dense neighborhoods? Where does it make sense to do mixed-use residential? It has an arts and culture component. It also has a downtown component. It has an urban core component. So if we don't have a plan, just like you would have a business plan, how do we know where we're going? But you don't make changes to things like our development code or our zoning ordinance that have been in place for more than 40 years without the need to have some tweaks. You're not going to get it all right on the first try. And that's the great thing about this plan, is that it was created by ordinance, it was a vision of the community, and how successful we become with components of the plan will determine where we head and where our community takes us. And again, where the council takes us, where the building community, the businesses, the development, where those residents, those 66,000 people settle, what parts of our community and our parish are attractive to them, and what can we do to make all parts of our parish equally attractive. I think the comprehensive plan does that. It is a plan which envisions a pathway for the future. There will be some bumps in that road. We need someone with experience who has been through that bumps, who's been through the planning process, who's been there when the plan was written, and who can work with the council. And if we need to change the plan to develop the architecture and the ordinances that need to be changed through public hearings and vision and discussion with the business community, we get that before the council. All good plans are not set in stone. The plans that make for successful communities are the ones that are allowed to grow as we grow as a community.
Mr. Robideau.
Thank you. Jason had touched on the plan in his opening comments when he talked about the gateway corridors and the need for the charter to be modified. And I'm going to focus right now on the gateway corridors because as people come into this community, what they see is what they see off of I-10. And we can do better. We need to honestly address the challenges that we face, and that's one of them. Scott has done a really good job with their I-10 interchange. Even St. Martin Parish and Bro Bridge has done a really good job. And so we need to figure out how to accomplish the same thing. We have 4 incredible gateway corridors that come in off of Interstate 10, one of them for the university. And so that's going to take the effort of local government, working with state government, working with federal government to figure out, hey, how can we get this funding? What can we do to make it more attractive, to get it to a point where businesses want to locate on those corridors? Because with businesses comes jobs. With jobs, people want to move there. As people move there, the communities rise to the level that they want to rise to. And so I think Plan Lafayette has given us the documentation and a roadmap to achieve that. And it goes into everything from the urban core development downtown, it goes to the charter, and so it speaks on a whole lot of issues. And so the comprehensive plan doesn't talk about roads and infrastructure so much, and that, I think, needs to be part of it if it's going to be a true comprehensive plan. But it is a really good template for what we need to do. And so I would, my personal preference is those gateway corridors are as important to this community as anything else in that document, and I would focus my attention there.
Fact of the matter is, we've already figured it out. The 3 gateway corridors that are the ugliest, Ambassador Caffrey, University Avenue, and I-49, Evangeline Thruway, are state gateway corridors. And the reason they look like they look is because there wasn't a plan. There's a 4th exit, Louisiana Avenue, where we paused building and construction to create an overlay district, a plan. Local government did that. To bring the infrastructure to Louisiana Avenue, local government did that. To cut the grass and to prescribe what type of signage and what type of zoning that overlay district will look like, local government did that. That's why the local government gateway looks fabulous. That was this administration, this council, well, the first council of this administration, and so we understand that gateway corridor. The gateway corridors also are not just along the interstate. We have corridors to the south along Highway 90. We have the corridor at Four Corners, which used to be the bustling area of our community when we all used to eat Miss Oleet's cornbread dressing at Jacob's and then cross the street and go to Toby's. That was the showcase corner. We need to do something about the motel at the corner. We have a plan, hopefully, to abate that in cooperation with the neighbor, with the owner. And also the North University underpass, and then the downtown gateway is a completely different story.
You both have mentioned the gateway corridors, and so, Mr. Robideau, if I could follow up with a question specifically regarding those. That our residents and businesses have long felt that major gateway corridors into Lafayette don't reflect necessarily the community values, quality of life, or aspirations. Given the importance of the gateway corridors in setting the tone for visitors and residents alike, what specific proposals could you offer in terms of a comprehensive program for the gateway improvement? And also, what do you see as the role of the state versus the parish in improving those gateway corridors?
Yeah, and let's make sure everyone's clear about these corridors. It's not just the exits off of Interstate 10. I mean, it's the corridor into our community. And so if we use the Louisiana Avenue as an example, and that occurred during my first 4 years as a state legislator, what we were able to do is we secured 2 cents of the state's 4-cent sales tax to put into that fund, that TIF district, to actually help build out the infrastructure. And that's the one example of a TIF district that I think everyone agrees on works. You collect the money, it pays off the drainage in the streets, and then let the developers and the builders come and figure if you've got the roads and you've got that infrastructure laid, that they will come. And I think you'll see, and Dee can speak to it also, that development is starting to happen in Louisiana, but it can never be done locally by itself. And so you're going to need the state. I mean, we're talking millions of dollars. And so when I talk about the corridors, I'm not talking about simply the exit and who's cutting that grass on the hills to the overpass. I'm talking about bringing that corridor all the way in from University all the way down to the Four Corners. And it would be nice if the city had the money to say, hey, great, we've got it. It's going to be about $70 million. We're going to make this place something that everyone can be proud of. The reality is you're going to have to get with the state. You're going to have to say, look, we send a lot of tax dollars to the state of Louisiana. Who's the legislative delegation? You're going to have to meet with those folks. You're going to have to meet with the Department of Transportation. You're going to have to meet with whoever the governor is and say, we need help with this project. This is why this project's great. This is why we want to do it. And so that's the relationship of working together. That's how it all happens. Nothing here gets done solely by the city. It's going to take additional funds, and it's going to come from the state.
So here's how it went down. It actually wasn't 2 cents, it was 1 cent. And one of those cents belongs to us, the city of Lafayette. So the city of Lafayette increased it by 1 penny, and we recaptured 1 penny of the state's tax, not 2 cents. Because Governor Blanco and then Secretary Mike Olivier, who is from Lafayette, got it. And they understood that retail was also economic development. No offense to Governor Jindal or to former Secretary Morey about what they've done for economic development. We can look at the facilities in this area and Bell Helicopters and others and know that that's significant. But their position was that retail was not economic development. So in spite of having an agreement, a signed agreement with the city of Lafayette, the state of Louisiana said no more. No, we're not going to give our 1 penny anymore. This was the last deal. There was a $10 million cap, and there was a cap on when the bond debt was going to be paid off as well. They interpreted that, meaning the state, that once the bond debt was done, we were done. Those were the words from the state. We are done. The seed that was planted in partnership with the city was awesome. It was a great agreement. We needed that 1 penny to make it happen, and our 1 penny made it happen. But now the development that goes to the north side, and specifically answering your question of that corridor, is we need to build a frontage road. And now because that TIF has been successful, without the help of the state, that TIF district and that retail development, which the Jindal administration does not believe is economic development, will happen. And go talk to the people who live up there, who use it, who run it back and forth along I-10 and frequent those areas, the people who work there, the people whose livelihood depends upon that community, that development. I can tell you that community believes that it's economic development. Ink is just about dry on the next deal on the northeast quadrant and potentially on the northwest quadrant. So that is an example of local government working with the state between 2004 until the bond debt was paid, and then local government taking the benefits of the vision that we have had to take it to further levels.
Yeah, I'm mad at Jindal too.
Another thing we have in common.
Yeah. I'm not going to elaborate because we still have projects in play for this community, and I don't want to jeopardize those.
Next question then to Mr. Stanley. Yesterday's launch of the next phase of planning of the Lafayette Connector represents a new milestone for the completion of I-49 South and offers an opportunity to transform a key gateway corridor. The Lafayette Connector, with a 5.5-mile interstate segment leading from I-10 to just south of the airport, will be the largest public works project in the history of the parish, directly shaping the urban core in the city of Lafayette for the century to come. In your opinion, what are the essential outcomes that define success for the connector as it threads its way through Lafayette? How will you work to protect the affected neighborhoods? And what would you do to achieve success on both of these fronts?
You have to change what it looks like. Nothing good happens under elevated highways. When I think of Claiborne Avenue in New Orleans, or I think of the West Bank Expressway, or I think of Beaumont, Texas, or what happened in Shreveport, none of that's good. You need to build something that is a postcard. You need to build something that when we send something from Lafayette, we can be proud of. I'm assured by some of the people in this room that have a vision that that potential exists to do that type of architecture. You have to protect commerce under the bridge, and you have to engage the community under the bridge. We have gotten a guarantee, at least verbally, and we'll see in the future if it happens, that the state plans to engage the community as it relates to the bed where that road is going to be or that bridge potentially is going to be suspended. The second part of that corridor is a 500-foot corridor, and that's the transition piece. And the third piece, where we've gotten some federal money through a Tiger grant to engage the neighborhoods to build something vibrant that is awe-inspiring when you see it, that will work. I have said at many of these forums, if that's not done, I believe the community will kill this project. I think they have the clout to do it. This is going to take billions of dollars in federal money to build the connector. And they are not going to give us that money and not work through the state to give us that money to build something that is ugly or that is not going to work and all it's going to do is move traffic. So I think the next months into years are critical as we engage the community through the state and we see what that looks like, what potentially we can build. But I think if it's an elevated highway, I think we're in for a long road. Nothing good happens under those type structures.
Yeah, so yesterday we had the press conference talking about this connector through Lafayette, and I was asked to say a few words, and I acknowledge that this has been a very long process. Certainly started long before I was an elected official, and as is oftentimes the case as an elected official, we just happen to be the one that gets to stand there when these things come to fruition. And so we've gotten this project to a point where we're going to have real discussions about what it's going to look like and where the design is going to go. And so Dee mentioned the Tiger grant that we've got, and that is going to be used to allow for the public to provide input. And let me just say, the public is very skeptical that we're going to be able to make this into something that is not a Berlin Wall, that further separates one side of Evangeline Thruway from the downtown area and segregates a community that already feels in a lot of ways that they've been neglected. And so that Tiger grant money has to be spent to engage the community and to figure out a way that that corridor is going to be an example for the rest of the country. We had a debate earlier, and when I said this, one of the ladies in the audience laughed at me, but I said I truly feel like in my heart that we're going to be able to come up with something. And I don't know what it is. I'm a nerdy CPA, so there's a lot more creative people. But we're going to be able to come up with something that's going to connect this community like we aren't even connected right now. Regardless of what the design's going to be, it's going to work in a way that anybody that has to do something going through their downtown and through their historical districts, they will be told, you need to go to Lafayette to see how they did it. And so that's my dream. That's my hope. I'm confident we can do it. And I agree with Dee that if we don't come up with something like that, then the community does have the power to shut it down, just like they did regarding the Harts Farm. And they're going to speak up, and if we're not speaking as one voice in Baton Rouge, then Baton Rouge is going to say, you know what, y'all can't even agree, so project's dead.
We have two people I consider visionaries in this room. One of them is right there, Nathan Norris, who is not from here, and he is a next level thinker. And I'm trying to find Harry's white beard. Harry, if you're here, kind of wave your hands around. Harry's way in the back on the last row. And he is also not from here, but is an amazing and incredible hire by one Acadiana. And both of these gentlemen, who I consider visionaries, come from areas where stuff like that has been done. And Joel's right. The lady who was in the audience was not impressed. She said, we'll never get this done. She was real negative, said, I think the community is going to kill it. I think it's too far gone. And I told her afterwards, I said, you should meet Harry. And when I walked out of the library, the two of them were talking still after about 45 minutes. Sorry, Harry, I don't know if it made a difference. But we have to go in with an open mind and have to be able to do those things. All you have to do is Google, I don't know, cable bridges or something like that. The architecture exists to be able to do something that this community deserves, that we will put on a postcard. When people see it, they will say, like the Superdome in New Orleans, that's Lafayette, Louisiana, when they see that bridge. That doesn't happen with elevated highways. They're everywhere and they're ugly. The challenge is to us to be able to get that vision created and then to get with the federal and state government and get it funded, because this is a federal highway system. It's going to take a lot of money.
Mr. Robideau, you just mentioned basically making sure that when this goes through downtowns that they are protected. And so I want to ask another question about downtowns to both of y'all. Cities and communities across the country are actively engaged in efforts to revitalize their downtowns. Increasingly, families are choosing where to live and work based upon the proximity to a safe and vibrant urban core. What is your vision for a safe and revitalized urban core in Lafayette?
Am I first?
Yes, sir.
Is my mic working? I had some really incredible answers that probably no one heard.
I'm sorry, let me get that remote control working again there for you, buddy.
I hate debating the media guy. They know all the tricks.
I'm telling you.
So as it relates to downtown was the question. And if that counts towards my 2 minutes, I accept that. But we all agree that something needs to happen downtown. And in every one of these forums, the same discussion is had. You know, what comes first? Do we bring in mixed-use residential and then hope that there's the grocery store that's going to then come to service them, or do we bring in the grocery store to get the mixed-use residential? I feel like we should treat the downtown development much like we would an industrial park, in that government's role is not to force a grocery store there or force a mixed-use development, but to provide whatever incentives they can to attract that to the downtown area. Because ultimately, if there's demand, then it's going to happen. If there's demand to live out on an acre of land out in the country, then someone's going to build out there, and that's the way it should be. And if there's demand for downtown development, it's going to happen. And everything we read, and anybody that's done any studying knows that the age group that's not D&I's age group enjoys downtown, enjoys living in the downtown urban environment. And so I believe it's going to happen. Government needs to make sure that they don't get in the way of that happening, and then any incentives they can provide to motivate all the different players that need to come. That's what the role is, and that's what it should be. And again, it's just working hand in hand to make good things happen for the community.
There's another visionary in this room, and she preceded Nathan Norris, and she's sitting second from the left in the blue, and her name is Kathy Weber. And she was a warrior for downtown. And what downtown has become, and I was in the trenches with her in the early 1980s when the government wanted to spend $2 million on downtown. Are you crazy? Downtown's dead. We used to have a grocery store. It's where the Children's Museum is. We used to have a department store. It's where the Science Museum is. And then, like many downtowns, we migrated in the late 1970s and early 1980s, like many other communities, to the mall life, to suburban life. And downtown just became a transitory piece for government and for finance. It is not like that anymore. They have done historic studies about the need for a residential component downtown. When UL went to the New Orleans Bowl first 4 years ago, I stopped by Rouse's to see my friends at WWL Radio, and they were talking about our community in such a vibrant way. And when I got in the car, the conversation and the commercial was, go check out Rouse's, the first full-service grocery store in the French Quarter in 50 years. Can you imagine, with a residential component in and around the quarter and what happens, that it took 50 years for them to get it back? Let's not make it take 50 years for us to do it. That streetscape program, which consisted of those wonderful little brick pavers and that awesome cypress tree canopy, was the start. That was only the start of something. So the specifics and the way to do it is to put money in your budget. And we have it in our local budget, more than $7 million to take streetscape to the next level. Why? Because private investment always follows public investment. The development of the Iberia Bank Tower was the LBA Tower before that. The development of the Acadiana Center for the Arts, which was a state project, the benefit of local government. Chase Tower coming in and taking the old F&B towers happened because there was an investment that was made downtown. Those are the answers.
Okay, I want to move to the next question to ask specifically about those economic incentives, but I want to go back to the prior question first, because half of that question, and maybe one of the important questions that a lot of people in the downtown area are looking at, is the safety of certain areas in the downtown, as well as maybe the difference in perception of the safety in different areas of Lafayette. And so what would you, let's go back to Mr. Robideau to begin this out. In terms of the safety, in terms of looking at areas like Northside and North Lafayette versus South Lafayette versus downtown, how would you work to make sure the perception of safety and the reality of safety are there?
Yeah, I think it's more the reality of safety than it is the perception. I mean, maybe a few years ago we could have said perception, but the reality is that there's issues, and it's not just downtown. And so government is here to provide certain services first and foremost, and that's the infrastructure needs of the community, roads and drainage, and public safety. And we collect, if you look at any of our tax collections, sales tax collections, property tax collections, those graphs are really impressive. We've had significant growth, especially compared to a lot of other communities. And so the first question is, we need to find out where's the money going, how much of it's being spent on public safety, and then if everything that you can do to provide those basic governmental needs is not there, then and only then do you go to the downtown folks and say, if you want additional dollars, we need to figure something out. And, so at the end of the day, public safety is public safety. That's what tax dollars are paid in for. That's what people expect out of government. And they don't want it just between 8 and 5. They want it all hours. When we're all sleeping, we want to know that we're safe. When we're downtown having dinner, we want to know that our cars are safe. When we're walking to our cars after dinner downtown, we want to know that we're safe. People don't differentiate between the times of days and where you are. We expect to be safe. We expect government to provide public safety, and I think that has to be, you know, as it's supposed to be, a priority of any government. It certainly would be a priority of mine.
Oh, well, it's a priority. It's 54% of our budget, and I don't think anybody's talking about cutting the police department. 54% of our operating budget is public safety, and 35 million of the roughly 99 million that is our operating budget is the police department. We have to put them in the best cars. We have to hire more police officers. We have to put them in the best locations. We have to use crime cameras. We've invested in crime cameras and are doing those things. The downtown group has developed a really vibrant and engaged group with now the Downtown Restaurant Association and bars coming together. And my experience is that this is the first time that that's happened. And they are an amazing conduit with incredible information and are wanting and hungry to be able to continue to work with the city. Before that, in the years past, that didn't really happen. The bars kind of went their own way and the restaurants went their own way. They've now come together and I think are very powerful, and we need to continue to have those discussions. There's no substitute for law enforcement when the crowd is downtown. Whether it's 2,000, 4,000, 5,000 people on a weekend full of liquid courage, problems are going to happen. And if they're not careful, those are the people that can become victims. So we have to have targeted law enforcement, community-oriented policing. We have put barricades downtown. We go to one-way on Jefferson Street, which was controversial years ago to keep the traffic flowing. It works very well at that time, but there's no substitute for the citizens and the patrons taking care of themselves and working in concert with law enforcement. But it's going to take manpower, it's going to take money. We are putting those resources there now, but like many growing communities, it's a difficult problem to handle. I think our community does an amazing job, and if you look at where we are downtown, we are a safe downtown. We need to be a much safer downtown.
Mr. Stanley, for the follow-up question. Successful downtowns are characterized by a mix of uses, including significant and stable housing components. Plan Lafayette and the new UDC offer new tools for the development of the downtown housing with a mixed-use framework. Mm-hmm. What specific development tools or incentives, which you both mentioned in the previous answers, do you think LCG should consider to stimulate investment in downtown housing?
Almost 10 years ago, the council at that time had the vision to direct the administration to put the request for proposal process for the old federal building site downtown, and to bring to that council something that would put that back into productive commerce, to try to jumpstart the residential component downtown and overcome the chicken and the egg. To live downtown, you want to have a grocery store, you want to have a department store, you want to have a movie theater. But for people to make, in the private sector, to make those types of investments, you have to have the people. So that's the catch-22. And you have to be able to incent those things, and you have to have housing that is market-based, but it is also attractive to the people that are moving downtown. I met with a group called New to Lafayette, which is kind of a representative group of employees who couldn't have picked Lafayette out on a map, much less Louisiana. Many of them work for Proficient, which is a 200-employee operation that is targeting downtown now. What we've heard from them is that they're hungry for a place to live right there in the urban core. So the one thing that you can do, certainly downtown, you could create potentially a TIF district, but I don't know that you need to do that yet. That may be the cart before the horse. The thing we have to do is put that corner of Jefferson and Main, that is a showcase corner, into play for somebody other than government to develop it, whether it's through a tax credit deal or other things, and it needs to be mixed use. Our council had that vision about 10 years ago. We have that vision now and have sent no fewer than 4 proposals down to the council to make it happen. What we have to do, new courthouse development, what we have to do is acquire the property, and we don't have ink dry on a piece of paper yet, but I think we're close. in picking a site that government will control for a new parish courthouse, because this is a real ugly triangle piece. It's not 1.8 acres, spotlight corner, but we have to get the property identified for a new courthouse so we can relieve the corner that is really ripe for residential development.
Mr. Robideau.
It's not that ugly a piece because we expect somebody to come in and buy it and put up some mixed-use residential, but it is a premier piece of property. And I think the council and the administration, I think most everybody agrees, we need to tear down the old federal courthouse. Government's role, though, as I believe, is what can you do to make downtown attractive for these companies and these individuals and these developers to want to go and build and develop something downtown. And so it's sometimes as simple as, hey, we got to figure out how to get them more parking, more adequate parking, better parking, safer parking. So government's got all those roles that they need to focus on to make sure that those things are in place. Sometimes that's enough. It's like, man, we really want to be downtown. That's where we want to locate. If you can get the parking situation fixed, if you can get the public safety situation fixed, which is what government's role is, we're ready to move. And sometimes that's not enough. Sometimes you do have to provide incentives. And in my earlier answer, I spoke about treating it as an industrial development, where we do provide these tax incentives like we did to Costco. And if that's something that we feel like so strongly about, that there's some business that is willing to come downtown and is going to provide incredible jobs, incredible development, and change the face of downtown and move it in a direction that everyone would be proud of, then that's something that government needs to put the pen to the paper, crunch those numbers, and say, if we're giving away these tax dollars for this period of time, what are we going to get in return, and does it make sense? So the question specifically is what incentives? And so I would consider the incentives that exist out there for all the industrial developments that we've done. And that's all the different tax incentives that both the local government has, that the state government has. Whatever we can package together to get Bell Helicopter here and all those other guys, though everything's on the table.
Clarification on the ugly property. It's shaped like that. And the president of Justice Planning, who did the study and recommended that it was feasible to do it there, stood with me on that site and the chief judge and the clerk of court and said it will work, but it is not an ideal site. We prefer sites that look like this. And then he pointed at the courthouse and he said, because that's how that building looks. We agree and support the tenants of the courthouse as the day that I walked in that building. Our clerk of court is sitting right there monitoring every word I say very carefully, and I appreciate that, Louis. And they've made it clear that they are not going to release this property until we have property for a new site. We are that close. Then it frees up the triangle piece to do something awesome. Then when we can afford to build a courthouse, we can do it at that time. And there are incentives that relate to the mixed-use development, tax credit, industrial development board, potentially revenue bonds, things related to the IDB, DDA, DLU. We obviously want to hear what they have to say.
And
as
Mr.
well.
Robideau had mentioned residential housing after possibly tearing down the courthouse. Do you have something specific that you would like to see done with that site?
The old courthouse site? Oh, I think mixed use. I think that's what we've talked about. That's what we've got to overcome that chicken and egg downtown. And going back to Ms. Weber's days, the things that we have heard about where downtown moves through this transitional piece is getting the residential component downtown, getting the people who want to live downtown, who want to be able to walk to and get the services that they need, I think is significant, but not at the expense of the site for a new courthouse. We put $1.5 million in the budget this year to demolish the existing building and at least have a clean site there, clean slate, so the blight goes away. And that's the first domino, I think, that needs to happen.
Same question again then. Any specific development that you had in mind for that?
Well, it depends who you talk to. There's folks whose the specific development is the courthouse that needs to go there. And until we work through all of that tension with the legal community, the judges, the DA's office, and that they feel comfortable that wherever we're going to move them to is adequate, is sufficient, and works well with the jail being downtown and transporting the prisoners a little further away or whatever, those conversations have to continue, because at the end of the day, like I said early on, I can have the best ideas in the world, and mixed-use residential may be the best ideas in the world. But if the council's not going along with me because they feel strongly the way the judges feel, or they feel strongly the way the clerk's office feels, or they feel strongly a way that's different than mine, then we're stuck on zero. And sometimes folks get tunnel vision, saying that's the piece of property, that's the piece of property, that's what we have to do, that's the only thing we have to do, there's no other option. And that doesn't serve the community well. We need to be open to whatever options are out there. And if it works out that that piece of property is best as mixed-use residential and the folks with the courthouse are happy with another location, then great. That's perfect. We can all put that on paper and move forward. But that's not where we are right now. There's still significant concerns from the community that's in the courthouse now that that location is best for the courthouse.
And I want to follow up with one last kind of property question. Adjudicated properties or properties owned by a municipality as a result of non-payment of property taxes are a major driver of blight in both residential and commercial neighborhoods. In the urban core of Lafayette, hundreds of properties currently impede prospects for revitalization and gateway corridor improvements without any clear path forward. What concrete steps will your administration take to process the backlog of adjudicated properties and implement a clear path for their return to commerce?
Am I first on this?
Yes, sir.
Okay. I don't mind holding. Does that work better?
Why don't we give it mine? Mine works perfectly. I'll take them.
You want me and I to switch?
You can if you want.
You don't know the answer to that question anyway.
I'm stalling. All right, is that better? Is it better?
Yeah.
Or is it just my voice? All right. Can you tell me the question again, Professor?
Absolutely, I sure will.
I remember now. Blighted and adjudicated property.
Concrete
Yep.
steps for the administration to take
That's
for
right.
backlogs. Yes, sir.
One of the best things about campaigning is you do find out a lot of information about things that you weren't really familiar with. And one of them is this situation. I've had meetings with folks that are directly affected, and it's the neighbors to the blighted and adjudicated property. And there's a bunch of great ideas that folks have that say, hey, let's set up some priority systems so the neighbors have right of first refusal to acquire the property. That the faith-based community is in some tier to acquire the property and put it back into commerce. That you set up some type of credit union for the faith-based community or the neighborhoods, so that if the neighbors don't have the wherewithal to acquire the property, that maybe they can pool their resources, maybe that they can get the money through a credit union. So there's a lot of great ideas that are out there to solve that problem that are better than the current method, which is whoever happens to have the cash can go down to the sheriff's sale and start acquiring all these properties, and then we don't know what they're going to do with them, and they may or may not do what's in the best interest of the area. They may just turn it into rental properties that they may not keep up, that doesn't really benefit the neighborhood in the way that it could possibly benefit the neighborhood. So there's all kinds of ideas, all kinds of discussions. They're all good. We've talked about it at a lot of the forums that we've been to, because ultimately, the folks that are invested in those communities, they have a desire, more than anyone else, to see it improve and to see it be like they remember it when they were younger and they were kids, and they want it to return to that. And so I think it's one of those situations that the council, the parish president, the stakeholders in the community, the faith-based community, we all get in a room, figure this out, and then start passing whatever ordinances we need to pass and get the legislation, if we need that, to be able to accomplish the things that the citizens in those communities want.
The real problem is nobody's going to the courthouse and buying anything. If that were the case, you wouldn't have any adjudicated properties. The problem that you're having is the value of the lien is more than the value of the property. The other issue you have is that many of them are in airship issues because there have been multiple generations where people have died and others have died, and so title is not clear. So what we did is we worked with Southern University Law Center in an absolutely awesome project, and we had them pick 13 of the adjudicated properties and assign young lawyers and law school students to those to try to develop a roadmap. And what they found out was that there's no special salve that you can shoot on this problem and make it just go away, because each one of the 13 had real different issues. Not the least of which is you have multiple taxing authorities. The mayor, city parish president, and council does not have the authority to clear title for something or to waive the taxes that the school board is entitled to. The state has also wrestled with that problem. The legislative delegation has tried and has put some laws in place to try to move this thing forward, because you can't just auction them to the highest bidder when you don't know whether you can guarantee title or not. Our council chairman, who represents District 4, who ran unopposed, has many of the adjudicated properties in his district and has been working with us, and I believe an ordinance is coming soon, if it's not already on the agenda for introduction, to try to put the project in place through local ordinances to move it to the next level. One thing I do support is that if you got a guy or a business who's been taking care of the property next door for 20 years, so the taxpayers don't have to, and we don't have to pay our money to cut the grass, we ought to give it to him. And he's earned it, and we ought to find a way to be able to clear that title. And there is a potential to be able to do those things. But it will take an ordinance. It potentially could take maybe a declaratory judgment or some sort of legal instrument that a judge would be able to bless the ordinance to know that it's constitutional, because taking someone's property away, that's a precious right. So you have to be careful, but it's past time to be able to clean up those issues.
The next question is for you, Mr. Stanley. Traffic congestion and its negative effect on economic productivity and quality of life is a serious problem in Lafayette. How should our finite financial resources be prioritized for greatest improvement on local infrastructure?
Well, yeah, a bigger problem would be if we had no traffic, and there are parts of the state where we know where that exists. A bigger problem still would be if our traffic looked like Baton Rouge looks. Joel and I have kind of gone back and forth on the traffic issues. I'll kick the can to him by saying that the majority of the problems on the roads that we have are state problems because they're on state roads. Joel will kick the can back to me and say, yeah, but the local guys could do a lot better in the local roads that we have. Fact of the matter is, I think both of us are probably right. But we do have a prioritization plan in our budget. One way is to do it the old-fashioned way, and that is you do what you can afford. We put before the voters in 2006 a sales tax plan to do $600 million parish-wide. And the voters at that time said no to that sales tax. That was bad news at the time. I think it's good news now. We have two sales taxes in the city of Lafayette, one approved in 1961 and one in 1985. And that's why we felt like maybe it was about time. But had that tax been approved and had those roads been built and we were driving on those roads, we'd have 25 years worth of bond debt, and that tax would continue. I think in addition to our aggressive bond program, where we're planning on doing between 55 and 80 million in roads for local improvement to roads and bridges over the next 4 years, we potentially could use the model that the Airport Commission we used with them. That is a parish project, a tax that goes away. Then all we have to determine is what roads you want to build and to take under our own control. Once we do that, you put it before the voters, you say that you're going to build these roads, one tax, one project, and that could be multiple projects within a construction project, could raise $50 million parish-wide. Then you build the roads and the tax goes away. You've paid down debt, you've paid cash for the infrastructure, you've put people to work, and you've moved traffic.
Oftentimes, government likes to use the trick where you pay for all the stuff in your budget, and then when you're short, you make sure that you go to the ballot for a new tax for things like roads and stuff that people are going to really have a hard time voting against. Rather than funding roads first, funding public safety, maybe 54% is not enough, maybe it needs to be 55%. But funding those core elements of government before you go to the taxpayers with it. And the comment was made after the tax failed that, well, I guess people don't want roads. And I don't think that's the case. I just think that people felt like we're taxed enough, we're not convinced that all the money that could be spent on roads is being spent on roads. And that's why the tax failed. Fast forward the 10 or so years, 9 or 10 years, and the airport tax was for a very specific project, was for a very specific time, and it was something that the voters could identify with and say it's going to fix this problem, and then it goes away. And it passed. And so I am going to go back to what Dee said about the relationship between the state roads and the state funding. Johnson Street is a state road. It was called the Abbeville Highway because it connected two small communities that the state connected, Lafayette and Abbeville. Lafayette grew up around it. So to suggest that, well, hey, it's a state road. I'm sorry, we built everything on the sides of the road and put all the traffic on it and all the business and all the commerce. That's the state's problem. Well, let me just say, as a legislator, I've been able to deal with that. We have sent over $260 million we have received of our tax dollars back for Ambassador Caffrey, for College Saloon, for Verrott School Road that's about to happen, for Golden Grain, Field Span, Apollo Road, 182, the widening of Highway 90, $260+ million. So you've got to be able to go to the state and say, hey, these are our tax dollars. We want some of them back, roads. We need to do that first and foremost. We need to continue to do that and work with whoever's the delegation now that I'm gone.
I find it ironic and somewhat hypocritical that the chairman of the tax committee is telling the local guys and the local taxpayers about taxes, when taxes get passed in Baton Rouge all the time without a vote of the legislature at all. It happens of the people at all, only a vote of the legislature. It happens behind closed doors. As far as the $200 million we got back, how much did we send? Because I am assured that Lafayette is a donor community. And I don't know about the people in this room, but I'm tired of making the donation. As it relates to Johnston Street, it's as ugly as it was 50 years ago. I'm not talking about it, blaming it on the state or demonizing the state or doing those things that I've been accused of. But if local government has to take on the responsibility of fixing state roads, my God, are we in trouble? We need to use local tax dollars, local money, to fix local roads. And I'm confident that the people of Lafayette Parish, when given the right plan, will vote for the right plan and not vote it down because local government is trying to pass a tax to balance its budget. You got to be kidding me. The state's $1.6 billion in the red. The treasurer just said that the previous budget is out of balance. The current budget is balanced on $62 a barrel oil. We haven't seen that in a long time. And we're going to talk about local government raising taxes to balance the budget? It's not true. We have $32 million in the bank for our operating budget to weather the storm that's coming, and we have almost $70 million in capacity without raising taxes to build roads. Our budget is balanced, I can assure you of that, and our auditors back that up.
Mr. Robideau.
Yeah, I'm not sure what I said to make Dee so mad, but the point I was trying to make, I'll reword it, is that we are a donor parish, and I believe that as good, religious, moral people, we understand that there's some parishes in this state that don't even have a Walmart. Their median income's under $10,000. So us, Mandeville, Covington, we understand that some of our money is going to go to those that are less fortunate than we are. We're never going to get it back, and we are a donor parish. But the emphasis I was making is it requires our local government to work with the legislative delegation that we all vote on and send to Baton Rouge to say, continue to give us money for Ambassador, continue to give us money for Johnson Street, continue to give us money for College Saloon, which is now a city road, but they still asked me to get $5.4 million for as chairman of Ways and Means, and I was glad to do it because I understand the importance of College Saloon and all of those roads in the parish. And so the relationship between the state and local government, it has to be there. And we can talk about the budget and the state problems, but we're not running for governor. And that's the operating budget. That's not the capital outlay budget that we're talking about and the budget that I was in control of. I'm gone. So we don't know if we're going to have that person that we can have a direct phone call to say, these are the issues, Mr. Chairman. We don't know. We're one of 144 now. Whoever we send there, we've got to go there and lobby with them to say, let's get as much of our tax dollars back. That's all the point I was trying to make.
Only one brief rebuttal. Don't confuse anger with passion.
Well, in my passion for traffic, I'll follow up with another one then. As a way to improve traffic congestion, One Acadiana is supporting targeted investments, including intersection improvements at key corridors, roundabouts, and the construction of the South City Parkway extension. What targeted investments do you see as critical to relieving traffic congestion? And this will start with Mr. Robideau.
Yeah, I think the targeted investments and the return on investment and all of those analytical tools that exist out there to help us figure out where do we get the most bang for our buck. So where do we go spend that money that's going to mitigate traffic the best, that's going to do all those things that will help with the congestion. I think that's all very, very smart. The roundabouts, I think, took some people a little bit of time to get used to them, but they certainly move traffic a lot better than four-way stop signs. And so I think those are working, so we would want to continue along those paths. I think there are certain intersections in town where you may be 3 or 4 light cycles away. And so, yeah, any targeted infrastructure improvements that you can make at these intersections. As it relates to the South City Parkway, I'm not 100% sold that that project should take precedence over some of the others that are out there. And so we have 733, that's a state highway, that's a bridge, it's about 1/4 of a mile away from where the South City Parkway would go. And so I would want to see the analysis that's done saying, which of those two gives us the best return on investment? Which one of those two does it make more sense to partner with the state, to have them pay for some of it, and to widen 733 since a bridge is already there, and it brings the traffic all the way into and out of the Milton area. So although I understand the need for another bridge or a more capacity over the river, I'm not quite there yet with South City Parkway versus 733. I think they could both be viable alternatives. I don't think right now we need to do both. We need to figure out which one gives us the best return on investment.
Is there one at the top of the list for you?
Between those two?
No, just in general in targeting that, the investments in the area.
Kali Saloon. I mean, I think that one, we need to get Kali Saloon done. I don't think anybody would disagree with that.
Yeah, South City Parkway. We've funded the line and grade study for South City. It takes years and years and years to build bridges, as we know. We're still talking about South College 40 years later. Either we need to build it or stop talking about building it. The problem with South College are the approaches. A bridge is only as good as its approaches. And Pinhook Road is 4-lane, I mean, coming up to Bendel. Think of it as if we had 2 more bridges across the river at Ambassador Caffrey in the river. What do you do when you get to Ambassador Caffrey and Kali Saloon or Johnston Street and Ambassador Caffrey? You're able to get across the river, but your approaches aren't good enough. That's what the engineers tell us about South College. What they tell us about South City is it's the last vacant piece of land between the bridge at 733 and the Pinhook Bridge. So if there is to be a bridge, and it's still an if, of course, that's the location, because to do otherwise means you have to destroy people's homes and lives to do it, and that gets incredibly expensive, and let's just face it, it's not going to happen. What happened with Camellia Boulevard is not going to be replicated. So we've looked at the engineering, we've looked at it as a traffic mover. There are some neighborhoods there that we have to be concerned about on each side, because it's the last vacant piece of land. If we don't do it, we lose the opportunity to do it forever. So I think we need to look at moving South College off because we need as many bridges as we can. And regardless of how close they are together, at South City Parkway, you'll be able to head north, get on the interstate at Scott at the extension of Apollo Road, and never have to touch Ambassador Caffrey to do it. Right now, there appear to be 10 homes or so that may be in the way that could be problematic. But again, you have to work with the neighbors and you have to look at that. If we don't do it, and we build only the bridge at 733, or we build only South College, we don't have the big movers that we need to, the big traffic movers that where the growth of our community has been heading. So we need to look at doing those. We need to look at capacity projects like Ambassador Caffrey North, the widening of and four-laning of University Avenue, which should be a state highway as well, north into Karen Crow, because that's an evacuation route. Wider roads, longer roads, more roads.
A rebuttal.
Oh, all I would say is, as it relates to 733 versus South City Parkway, with 733 being a state highway, that there is the potential to accomplish the same similar thing capacity-wise and actually receive funding from the state that you may not be able to get on the South City Parkway. Now, I may get into it and the state may say no, and so then South City Parkway gets elevated to the priority. But, you know, we all know we need a bridge. There's 60-something thousand more folks coming. That's going to make College Saloon worse. It's going to make Ambassador Caffrey worse. It's going to make Johnson Street worse. So we need to do something.
State could have funded 733 in the capital outlay bill at any point during the past 12 years. So
Yeah.
maybe they'll do it in the future. I hope they would, but they didn't do it now. So, and we've lost Joe. So I don't know what's going to happen in the future. Maybe it happens, maybe it doesn't. If they want to pay for it, we'd love for that to happen.
Yeah, and the way that process works is local government comes to us and says, this is our priority. Do this. So you get money for College Saloon. So you get money for Ambassador Caffrey Extension. Scott comes in and they get money for Apollo Road. So if the local government had come to us and said, 733, we need to widen it, we need the capacity, that's the priority, then it probably would have gotten funded as the other 260 million. So
I didn't bring up 733.
Mr. Stanley, you have the next question. Our capacity to tackle our challenges and to achieve substantial community improvement depends upon well-functioning and forward-looking governance. While consolidation has achieved some beneficial efficiencies of operations and delivery of services, consolidation has resulted in fundamental inequities with regard to representation and community self-determination. Very few observers would applaud our current model of governance as effective. One Acadiana has called for the creation of an independent charter commission to analyze the current structure and bring recommendations to a vote of the people before the next election cycle. The question is, how do you define the issues of fairness arising from the present structure of consolidated government, and does it merit the creation of a charter commission?
I signed the pledge to do that on July 10th, as proposed by One Acadiana. The key, as I was talking to one of my friends from Broussard, who's sitting on the front row, is to allay those fears that it is us against them. The government has to represent all people. We have been dealt this deck. I do not support deconsolidation. The people have voted on it twice already, once when they consolidated this government and once when they voted against deconsolidation. But what consolidation did was take a snapshot of the unincorporated area and say all you can do is be this size or shrink because of the growth of the other communities. So it's exacerbated, unintentionally, it's exacerbated the funding problem that exists in the unincorporated area because the denominator and the base has shrunk as the other communities have continued to grow. So you have to work with the mayors, you have to work with the area council. I've not heard from any of the mayors or any of the councils that they are opposed to City of Lafayette autonomy. The residents of Broussard, as an example, vote for the mayor of Lafayette. The mayor of Lafayette, the residents of Lafayette do not vote for the mayor of Broussard. And I think as we talk to the councils and the mayors, they agree that there's something that's just not quite right about that. That is beyond the pay grade of just the city parish president and the area mayors. The community has to make that decision, but we absolutely have to have the discussion. And the key will be in appointing representative members of the Charter Commission, but beyond that, having the dialogue with the communities to know that whatever comes has to be better than what we have now, and that they should not have any fear that it is the city of Lafayette versus the smaller towns, or the city of Lafayette in the unincorporated area versus the smaller towns. And that's what the pledge does. It envisions having the discussion with like-minded people and with the community to see what's out there. Our charter can be amended. It's legal to amend it. You would have to vote on it parish-wide. And I certainly support beginning the discussion, and that's why I signed the pledge.
Mr. Revenue.
I think for residents of the city of Lafayette, that there's no more important question than how do we solve this dilemma where Lafayette has the autonomy to vote on Lafayette-specific issues. But the fear from those that live outside of the city is real. They feel it, and they worry that any change to the charter is somehow going to affect them. And so I'll go back to my opening statements. It's going to be about relationships, because ultimately you have to have a council that will agree on whatever those changes are, and those councilmen currently represent the outside areas as much as they do the inside areas, with the exception of a few of the councilmen that are only in the city of Lafayette. So you're going to have those votes in order to change it so that they no longer have those votes. But the initial change is going to come from them. So if you don't have that relationship with your council, then nothing's going to happen. Nothing's going to change. And so how do you accomplish that? Well, you accomplish that by having a relationship with the folks that elected that councilman. And that means going to those elected officials in those other areas and saying, hey, this is what we want to see happen. What can we do? Where can we get your support? And start having those difficult conversations and inviting them in and listening and hearing what they have to say, and then coming up with a consensus that works for everybody. There's never going to be a perfect solution, but there is nothing we can do for the City of Lafayette residents if we don't have buy-in from outside of the city. That's just the honest truth, and so we've got to work with them to come up with that solution. It can't be just our idea, and this is what it has to be, and that's the fair way to go, and if you don't go along with me, I'm not going to pave your parking lot for your park. People don't want that. They expect more out of us as elected officials than to be punitive. They want us to come up with the solutions, and I think that's the only way it's going to happen.
Any rebuttals?
Did you sign the pledge to do that?
I did not sign the pledge.
I signed the pledge.
I'm not a pledge signer.
I understand.
The last question is going to be for Mr. Robideau. We've talked a lot about the details tonight, but for my last question, I'd like to ask about your broad vision. At the outset of what might be a multi-term administration, what is your long-term vision for the future of Lafayette, and where do you want to be in 4 years, and where do you want to be in 12?
Well, I want to be in 4 years where I want to be in 12. I just don't know if that's really realistically possible. But the vision is the same. We've got to put in place whatever we can put in place to make this parish the destination of choice for anybody that wants to come to Louisiana. That includes everything from our tax base, from our roads, from our education, from our culture. We have all the culture stuff. I mean, we're one of the only places in the world where like food is an art. So we've got that piece of the puzzle. We've got the great people. We've got that. We need to add our roads, our traffic, all of those, our public safety. We need to get all of that added to our best of list so that anybody that's looking to come to Louisiana is going to say, you need to explain to me why I'm not going to Lafayette Parish first, because that's where we want to go. And so 4 years, 12 years, I'd like for that to happen tomorrow, if at all possible. And I think that's what everybody really wants. It's just who can put that plan in place, who can galvanize the entire parish and get everybody thinking on the same page and moving us together as one parish. Because ultimately, we have to speak as one voice. It has to be that, hey, if they want to come and they want to move to Scott, then that's great. We're thrilled. We're glad to have them, because if it benefits Scott, it benefits the city of Lafayette. If it benefits any of the unincorporated areas, it benefits the city of Lafayette. We have to get to that point in our thinking. And so whether that's 4 or 12 years, my vision is that we're going to have the roads and the infrastructure in place. We're going to have the public safety in place. We're going to have all the culture that we already have, and that's just going to continue. We're going to have a downtown area that's going to be thriving and something that the community flocks to on weekends and in evenings. So, you know, I think that's what my vision is. I think that's what most people's vision is. It's just a matter of how do we get there and who do we put in place to make that happen.
Mr. Stanley.
My slogan of let's make our best of even better is catching on. And if you look at the best of lists, those don't happen by accident. And yeah, food is also sometimes a sport in addition to being, but also the best place to start and do business, the best place to raise a family, the vote of our community as a place to retire. And I look at the public safety, because we've talked a lot about public safety tonight. And I think about our police chief and how we came together with those relationships when our community was under attack back in July. And we made national news and worldwide news that we don't tolerate that here. That's my vision for our community, is to continue the things that we've done. We are government, and unlike state government, who gets everything perfect, obviously, we have to work together. We have to build those relationships. We have to move our council forward. We have to build the kind of community and have the kind of dialogue that we've had in the past 12 years that gets us on that list. And yes, it's about public safety. Yes, it's about downtown. Yes, it's about One Acadiana. Yes, it's about working with the state and the area towns and all of those things. That's what I've done. As a young reporter 35 years ago, I was on the streets of downtown and of those communities, in those boardrooms and in those council meeting rooms, learning from mayors, learning about governance, learning from councils, about creating the type of community that you want to live in. Certainly one that moves traffic, certainly one that patches potholes and cuts grass, but also the kind that attracts young people, that attracts companies like Encaro and CGI and Proficient, 1,000 jobs in our community, software related, brought here because of fiber optics in partnership with the state and the incentives that they do, and talking to those young people who, again, couldn't point Lafayette out on a map, much less Louisiana. That's the kind of community. And working in cooperation with our school system to get the kind of workforce that we need to be able to fill the jobs of the 60,000 people that have come. Where do I envision us in 4 years? What have we done for the past 12? I want to improve on that. Let's make our best of even better.
Any further comment on that, Mr. Roboto?
I think we all, you know.
We'll now hear the closing remarks from the candidates. Mr. Robo, you are first.
Okay, thank you. And again, thank everybody for coming, because this is the way that it's supposed to work, the democratic process, and it's such a good turnout. Certainly one of the better ones that we've had out of the 18 or so. But thank you all for coming. Thank the host for having this for us. I really do appreciate that opportunity. Let me end by saying that if we're going to move our community in the direction that we want it to move, we have got to put someone in the position that's going to foster those relationships and get along with the rest of the parish. The city of Lafayette cannot go it alone. We're the hub city. We have the majority of all the retail. We have the university, which is the biggest economic engine we could ask for. We've tried at the state level, and I think we will ultimately be successful to get a medical school to locate here. Those types of things diversify this community even further and make us more attractive and make this a place that's living up to the potential that I think we all believe it has. As a CPA, I'm committed to digging into the budget, figuring out where the money's being spent, changing things around if that's what's required. If it means tweaking public safety 1% and figuring out where I'm going to get money for something else, then that's what we'll do. I think my time in Baton Rouge has proven that I know how to build consensus, that I know how to build the relationship necessary to get things done. I was an independent when I got elected and was chosen by my peers to become the Speaker Pro Tem when I was the only independent in the House. I had a Democratic speaker appoint me as Chairman of Retirement. I've had a Republican leader appoint me as Chairman of Ways and Means, and it's because I'm honest, I'm fair, I know how to treat people. They feel like they can come and talk to me and will leave either agreeing or disagreeing, but know that they had an open and honest conversation and that we're all working towards the same goal. I feel like I'm the right person to be the parish president, and that's why I threw my name in the ring.
it's pretty neat when two friends run against each other, and Joel and I are friends. We ding each other up a little bit because that's what campaigns are about, him on the state budget, me on the traffic problem and other things. But look, it's about experience. As we talk about getting into the budget and talking about what we're going to do for public safety and whether we're going to move 1% here or 5% there, I've been involved with 20 budgets directly as it relates to this government. And again, we're government, so we're not perfect, but we've gotten it right for Lafayette and Lafayette Parish. I don't think it's arguable, if you look at what we've done over the past 12 years, that we are already there. We are the community that people want to live in when they come to Lafayette. We've done bold initiatives like fiber optics and the horse farm development. We're taking care of our infrastructure within our existing budget, without raising taxes for people, without even making the serious request of raising taxes, without incredible due diligence on that, and certainly not about raising taxes to fill a budget hole. When Youngsville built its sports complex and taxed themselves to do it, and Broussard to follow, they did it because it was awesome and because it was something new. It was something that made them competitive. It was something that gave them something that maybe Lafayette didn't have. And those are two incredible facilities. And that's what everybody wants in this room for our community. And I think that's what we've delivered up to this point, and I will continue to deliver it. I think if you talk to our council members, we certainly get along with our council because we get balanced budgets passed. And when we disagree, we move on to other things. That's what we're about. As I look each one of you in the eye, if you're here in Lafayette Parish, your vote is precious. I've said it before, it is something that should be pried from you. It should not come easy. You should vet the candidates. You should look at our experience levels. Joel has awesome experience in Baton Rouge. I have awesome local experience, hands-on running this government. When it comes time to vote and you get in that booth, I'm asking you to vote for number 72. I'm asking you to vote for the guy who's been there, been with you for almost 4 decades, on our streets, at our council meetings, in front of the media, putting my community first, being passionate about my community. I appreciate you guys coming tonight, and thank you very much for asking us the tough questions, and thanks to Joel as well for another spirited conversation. We seem to get into those once in a while. Thank you.
I would like to take this opportunity to thank each of the candidates for their time and participation this evening, to thank LUS for its corporate sponsorship of the debate, and to thank all those from One Acadiana and the Leadership Institute of Acadiana for the sponsorship and organization of tonight's events and question submission. I'd also like to introduce Angela Kring from the Leadership Institute of Acadiana for her closing notes.
Thank you, Ryan. As Ryan said, I'm Angela Kring. I'm the current chairman of the Leadership Institute of Acadiana. I want to start by thanking One Acadiana, our partner in putting on this event. It was a labor of love, I think, for both organizations. We really wanted to make this event happen, and I think based on the turnout here tonight, all of our efforts were very well worth it. Thank you all for participating and being here tonight. We appreciate it and appreciate all of those of you who are and will watch on AOC as well. Thank you again to our great sponsor, LUS Fiber. We appreciate your support. Thank you to the candidates, Joel and Dee. We appreciate your participation and your willingness to step into the limelight and run for this office. Dr. Teaton, thank you for moderating tonight. We appreciate you. Also, thank you to UL for the use of the P-Card Center. We appreciate that as well. The Leadership Institute of Acadiana, our mission is building community through leadership. And if If you want to learn how you can be more involved in our community in events like this, as well as with boots on the ground, I encourage you, or if you know someone who's interested in that, please apply for the Leadership Lafayette program. Applications are currently available on our website, leadershipacadiana.org. Those applications are due by October the 30th, so please get those in, and we hope that we all here and those people who come through Leadership Lafayette in the future can help these gentlemen to build a better community for everyone. So please go vote on October the 24th. Thank you again for coming tonight.